The punishment for shunning a forced marriage is being shunned. Mama sends me to live as a prisoner, trapped in my grandfather's fine marble mansion on his lush green plantation, surrounded by sugar and slaves. I am 15 now, old enough to know my own mind, but my stern old abuelito still treats me like a child, or a monster. He scolds and screams until I long to die, and then, suddenly, after 3 months of hateful insults and endless arguments, his raging heart fails, and I am left feeling truly monstrous. I loved him, in the angry way of young girls who love their families, no matter how oppressive, no matter how maddening. Now I really do feel like Ya Loca, the crazy girl, a madwoman, just as Mama and Abuelito accused. At the funeral, I remain quiet in my mother's infuriated presence. She blames me for her father's death, and even though I do feel shamefully responsible for arguing, I also feel absolutely certain that my grandfather's angry heart was his own. At the reading of the will, my mother learns that she has lost her entire inheritance, and this time, the loss really is my fault. Houses, farms, gold, everything will go to an uncle, simply because I refuse to be sold. From beyond the grave, my grandfather continues to punish my mother for defying him so many years ago. I try to feel sympathy for her, but secretly, I'm so relieved that I will never inherit sugar. Banished, outcast, rejected, forever. Mama won't allow me to come home. She tells me to stay in the countryside and rest. She thinks I'm hysterical. She believes that I'm mad. Why can't she see that I'm the same one, and it's only the bizarre rules of society that are crazy? My uncle, the new master of this farm, is indifferent to my presence, so I dwell like a fairy tale princess in a palace, surrounded by luxuries and caged. The horror keeps me awake. Even the house slaves fear me. Cooks and maids never speak to me. No one notices that I am not the one who wields whips and chains. I cannot rest. I cannot write. If my own unhappiness could magically bring my grandfather back to life, I would swiftly agree to a future of married misery. When my gloating uncle leaves to claim his other new properties, I dare to explore the mansion. Most of the rooms contain treasure, books, paper, ink, pens. Solitude, serenity. It's no use. I can't write. I need to roam. For the first time in my life, I've been released from the walls that trap women. Alone, I venture outdoors, wandering along muddy pathways, beside a river so peaceful that I dream, and then I swim. Forests, coffee groves, guava thickets, mango orchards. So much beauty, so much life. Honeybee hives, hummingbird nests, pink flamingos and green parrots, a giant woodpecker with a smooth ivory bill. Each sight is a marvel that deserves its own poem, but all I can do is look and listen, feeling serenaded by sound. And drenched in color as I gather my skirts to run freely beneath wild flocks of huge red macaws. Has sunlight always been this bright, or were my mind and my eyes asleep? My uncle stays far away, leaving the mansion's inhabitants uncertain. Cooks and maids grow more confident, offering their names and their stories. They seem to know that I'm not the proper lady I was trained to be, but a half-wild creature, a throwback to some other, more natural time and place. Perform plays, recite poems, and then let my audience go about their daily routines, without any rules made by me. I want to tell all the slaves that they are free to leave. But I have no authority. A few flee at night, while overseers are sleeping, but most stay, convinced that sooner or later my uncle will return and send slave hunters to chop off the feet of captives who've shown that they know how to run. Sometimes, fear is the most powerful weapon. I leave the sad mansion to roam tangled jungles, tranquil orchards, dark caves, and my own silent fear of never knowing how to live in a world where I don't belong. Nature is a sanctuary. Wilderness invites me. All I need is this leafy green pathway toward truth. But each time I go back to the house that I can never think of as home, I feel jolted by the sight of girls my own age, scarred by whips instead of words. So many of the babies on this plantation are brown. In the city, they would be orphans, but here, they stay with their mothers. When my grandfather was young and strong, did he rule like a brutal king? Are any of the slaves in the sugar fields my relatives? Disturbed and desolate, I roam country roads crowded with wanderers, muleteers and musicians, vendors, herders, hunters, and traveling magicians, all singing their rhythmic wayfaring songs. I dream of fleeing to Havana, the biggest city on the island, where I could work as a tutor, earn my own money, travel, see Niagara Falls. One morning, on a green hill beside a forest, an old woman leans from the open doorway of her raggedly thatched hut. She calls out, inviting me to share her dinner and the story. The meal is just yams and corn, but her tale is a familiar legend that seems to spring from the roots of my own life. Once there was a king who kept his son hidden in a tree so that the prince could never meet a girl and risk the heartbreak of love. Birds taught the tree boy their language of songs. A hawk showed the prince how to hunt, owls offered lessons in wisdom, parrots taught the art of cheerfulness, and doves spoke of love. One day, all the birds joined together and lifted the tree boy, flying with him balanced between their wings. They flew and flew, until finally they reached a far kingdom, where they dropped the prince onto a treetop. There, a beautiful young princess lived in isolation because her father, too, imagined that young people can be protected from the pain of finding and losing love. The old woman's tale of lonely tree children stays with me until gradually, day after day, the storyteller's friendly hut becomes my refuge. It is also my inspiration. I gather the old woman's stories like sour green fruits that can be eaten later, once their sweetness has grown full and ripe. Other wanderers come to the hut for tales and companionship. I meet farmers with sun withered skin, children with bright, eager eyes, and Sab, the storyteller's godson, a half-African freed slave, flame-scarred and troubled. My name is Bernabe, but ever since I ran into a fiery hut to rescue a burning child, everyone calls me Sab, from Saber, to know. People seem to imagine that my scars give me wisdom. I am not a storyteller, but I will tell you about my life, so that you and the other wanderers who visit my godmother will understand and believe the powerful nature of love. I was raised along with my owner's daughter, Carlotta, who taught me how to read and how to dream of a normal future together, dark and light dream forever, without any hatred, sadness, or fear. We were inseparable, we were happy, we promised that someday we would marry and have children of our own. But that hopeful age ended along with childhood's shared laughter. Now we are grown, and I still love Carlotta with all my heart, but she plans to marry a gentleman who gallops around the countryside on a spirited horse that makes him look brave. After the fire, when Carlotta's father freed me, he gave me this gentle pony and one imperial lottery ticket. See, it's a winning ticket, worth a fortune. Her father gave me instructions, too. He ordered me to ride all the way to Havana to claim my prize, enough gold to buy a house and a business, in that rich city where freed slaves flourish like vines. He told me to ride far away and never return to this valley. He imagined that wealth could cure my lovesickness, but he's wrong. They're all wrong, the greedy fools who believe that an absence of love can be purchased. Sab's tale of rejection by his childhood sweetheart is so emotional that I feel both anger and envy. I long for love, yet Carlotta has sent her true love away. Did she stop caring about Sab merely because his skin is brown or because his face is scarred? But what do I know of loyalty? All I've seen of love is the daydream described in romantic novels. What about reality? It's never as simple as a fantasy. Is there any way for Sab's tale of loss to end hopefully? During my next visit to the storyteller's hut, I meet Carlotta and her gallant gentleman. She is lovely, and he is so handsome that I find myself imagining I am the fortunate girl on his arm, ready to travel with him to Paris and Madrid, where we could visit salons and I would have a chance to meet Europe's great poets. Swept away by fantasy, I convince myself that any man who is charming must also be honest and courageous, a hero of justice. I have planted a moonlight garden for Carlotta. All the flowers bloom only at night. While she is lost in sleep, the fragrance of jasmine and angel's trumpet will blossom and flow up to her window into her dreams, helping her dream. I have been transformed into a messenger. Sab has asked me to carry heartfelt love notes. In the first passionate letter, he begs Carlotta to wake up and gaze at her moonlit garden of night-blooming magic. But her blunt reply is a series of commands. Go. Flee. Never try to visit me again. Send no more flowery notes. Forget our friendship. We were just children. It was not love. Instead of another doomed note, this time I send a bracelet woven of my own hair, to remind Carlotta how it felt when our two small heads touched and all the rest of this vast spinning world seemed so distant and powerless. My role as a messenger feels oddly familiar. I am like Manuel, a smuggler of words, as I sneak back and forth, followed by Leal, Loyal, a little dog who chooses to regard me as his friend, even though he belongs to the storyteller. Instead of answering Sab's woven plea, Carlotta confides in me, sharing anxieties. Her father recently placed all his wealth into a risky investment, and now he is suddenly bankrupt and she is poor, and the gentleman Carlotta loves turns out to be greedy. As soon as he heard the news of her family's misfortune, he told her that he no longer has any interest in marrying her. Foolish Carlotta is unwilling to forget him, just as Sab is unable to forget her. Why did I ever imagine that love could be simple? I envy my little horse. He never despairs. He does not care if I feel sadness or joy. He carries me without questions, treating me like his friend, instead of a burden. I envy the trees that grow at crossroads. They are never forced to decide which way. How could I ever have pictured myself in love with Carlotta's greedy gentleman? There is nothing gentle about a selfish passion for money. Sab is the only man I have ever known who shares my dreams and my nature. Sab is the only one I can truly love forever. There is a vast cave near the storyteller's hut, a huge, mysterious chain of caverns where her Saboni Indian ancestors lived long ago. Weighed down by my visions of an unhappy future, I wander through the maze of caves, with only a small candle to light my way. One chamber resembles a palace carved from sapphires and diamonds. In another chamber, ancient people left bright red and black paintings of frogs and birds on water-smooth walls. In some chambers, jagged crystals are shaped like heads and hands, as if spirits had turned to stone. Beyond the 11th chamber, no one has ever ventured. It is said to be the jaw of hell. I peer into the gloom, then turn and make my way back outdoors, to a sunlit moment of decision. I will ask Chula to marry the man who is loved by Carlotta, leaving my sweetheart free to remember that she once loved me. No brilliant playwright could ever have imagined a more ironic and devastating scene. Just after I realize that I've fallen in love with Sab, he asks me to marry someone else. My answer will have to shatter his scarred heart along with my broken one. If it's true, as the old storyteller promises, that souls can rise and soar in dreams, then I must be a night-flying bird with clipped wings. Will I ever be brave enough to sing in sunlight? Chula has refused to marry the man on the spirited horse. She calls my request horrible, insisting that marriage without love is just one more twisted form of slavery. She is right. I am human. We carry our tangled emotions to the storyteller, whose age gives the wisdom of experience, but in place of clear advice, Sab's godmother gives us a parable, a story about a house filled with mirrors. By the time her tale ends, Sab and Jay both understand that we are living reflections of each other's freedom dreams. When I ask Chula to marry the gallant gentleman, I imagine that she loved no one, but my godmother's tale of mirrors helps me see that Chula loves me and I have been cruel, just as Carlotta is cruel. Love is as tricky as a wall of mirrors that make narrow hallways seem open and wide. Sab is startled when I invite him to marry me, but I must admit that I am not completely surprised by how readily he refuses me. His devotion to a childhood love is as much a part of his goodness as the courage that sent him running through flames to save a burning child. If I could love Tula, I would, but love is a wildly unpredictable hurricane wind, not a swirling blue ocean with peaceful. There was a time just a few hours ago when I felt breathless with hope for a future with Sab, but now I feel smothered by grief. I miss the company of orphans. No one else has ever seen me as I really am, an outcast, a wanderer, condemned to explore the unknown world of human emotions. We remain friends, close companions. Tula and I agree that we will never grow bitter, never see each other as enemies. If I could have a sister, I would choose Tula. If I could plant a garden with wings, the feathers would be her wandering. I long for love's joy for myself, but I also wish for Sab's true happiness, even though it means that he will find joy with someone else. So, while he dreams of 1,000 ways to change Carlotta's rigid mind, I dream of 1,000,000 ways to change my own stubborn heart. If Carlotta's father's fortune was restored, she could marry her gentleman and she would be happy. With no other way to help her feel joy, I resolve to give her the only object of value that I have ever held in my hand. This winning lottery ticket means nothing to me, but it will mean everything to Carlotta, who longs to regain her value as a marketable. Sab's plan is both generous and hideous. His only joy will grow from knowing that his childhood love is happy with someone else. My own future is tragic, too. All I can do is give ugly sorrow a comforting home on paper, folded and tucked away, my hidden treasury. Perhaps it is true that time heals love's wounds, but for me, poetry has always been the swiftest medicine. 7 long years ago, unable to stay in the valley where Sab loved another, I begged a ride on a caravan of musicians and rode, swaying in their brightly painted wagon, all the way to Havana, as I listened to the sad happy lyrics of songs about love found and lost, rhyme songs wrapped in joyful music. Life in this huge, anonymous city has taught me how to survive on my own, thinking independently and earning my own salary as a tutor. Plans for a few healing verses about my turbulent feelings for Sab have grown into a novel, a whole book, although I've not yet been brave enough to set the words down on paper. I carry them around in my heart and mind like wild birds that fly in all directions without any fear of being unable to return to the safety. City life is a whirl of poetry readings and forbidden tertulias, gatherings where young and old, rich and poor, male and female, dark and light, runaway slaves and freed ones, former masters and former servants, all take turns sharing secret verses rooted in startling new ideas. Each evening, I go home with a mind that glows in the light of words, which leap like flames. After reading a few of my boldest new verses in public, I begin to wonder about the timid past and the courageous future. All the orphans I knew are grown by now, perhaps writing and acting their own daring parts. But what about Sab? Is he happy? And how can Carlotta ever be content in a marriage to a man who loves only her money? Manuel, during visits to Havana, I'm shocked by my sister's independence, but also inspired. If a woman can shed all the whims of tradition, then sicken a man. Sicken I when Mama tries to choose my wife, I'll defy her. In the meantime, I need to warn Tula that her mother is already arranging another profitable engagement. My brother's warning does not frighten me. I am 22 years old, and no one can tell me how to marry. Last night, at a poetry reading, soldiers sent the audience scurrying for safety. I had just glimpsed Caridad in the crowd, moving toward me, but she escaped, and I escaped too. Now I'm convinced that I must go overseas, to live and write in exile, like Heredia. There is no other way to tell a truthfully balanced tale. Caridad in Havana, I've earned a living making sweet cakes. A portion of my baking goes to a convent, for the orphans, and a portion of each evening is given over to poetry, as I listen while orphans read to me. I almost had a chance to visit with Tula and let her know how much her winged turtle meant to me. Even though we could not speak, I saw her smile. I think she knows. Can a woman ever write the true thoughts of a man? Will I be able to show Sab's soul on paper? Can a free person really understand one whose dreams must fly up and soar high above the depths of slavery? Is my imagination enough, or do I need to add the ways in which I myself have felt enslaved? I'll be honest, writing myself into the story, revealing all my secrets. Manuel and I have bought passage on a ship to Spain, with a stop in France. He warns me that Mama and our stepfather will be on the same ship, but I know that I can avoid their tricks. I am strong. People in small boats call out, then turn and rhythmically row back to shore. Sailors sing, while I walk the sea. With my face to the wind, I dream of Sab, both the real man and my novel. This will not be a book about the whips and chains of slavery, it will simply be a gentle tale of love. If the story is seen as proof that human souls are transparent and free of all color, class, and gender, then I will know that I have succeeded in showing how people are all equal and should always be equally free. The novel will have to wait. This blue sea fills my mind with poetry. When a hurricane overtakes the ship, Manuel and Mama flee to their cabins, but I perch on deck in a double tempest. I live at the center of two storms, one of wind, the other a hurricane of the spirit, the storm of emotions that helps me fight back with strong words whenever life is unfair and I feel powerless. Passage across the sea is long and exhausting, but I feel so exhilarated. We arrived at the French river port of Bordeaux, and I've managed to ignore my mother's efforts to talk about another engagement. Eager to write about Sab, I sit at a little desk in a small room in a hotel called Peace. I have a feather pen, and a window with a view of sky. What more do I need? I don't know how my book will end. All I know is that love is not the modern invention of rebellious young girls. Love is ancient, a legend, the truth. Ries, IOEE, EGO greater than EEIE. See historical note. The Lightning Dreamer is historical fiction. I have tried to present realistic portraits of Gertrudis Gomez de Avellaneda and her family, but I have also taken great liberties, imagining many details. Gertrudis Gomez de Avellaneda, 1814 to 1873, born in Puerto Príncipe, now Camagüey, Cuba. Avellaneda was variously known by her childhood nickname Chula, the pen name La Peregrina, the Wanderer, and La Avellaneda. Because her mother regarded reading and writing as unladylike, young Chula wrote stories about giants and vampires in secret, then burned them. Sab, Carlotta, the old storyteller, and the greedy gentleman are actually fictional characters from Avellaneda's groundbreaking abolitionist novel, Sab. Biographers believe these characters were inspired by real people Avellaneda met at the age of 15, when she was sent to a country estate, to rest, after refusing an arranged marriage. I have imagined Avellaneda's encounters with her own fictional characters, borrowing many aspects from Sab and inventing others. During her lifetime, Avellaneda was celebrated as one of the world's most prominent female writers. Known primarily as a poet and playwright, she chose lyrical prose for her boldest work. Written in the romantic, melodramatic style of the time, Sab was one of the world's first abolitionist novels and the earliest one written in Spanish. Sab is also the only known Latin American abolitionist novel that combines pro-emancipation views with feminist themes. Banned in Cuba, Sab was published in Spain in 1841, 11 years before the American publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. Avellaneda began writing Sab when she was only 22, at the Hôtel de la Paz, Hotel of Peace, in Bordeaux, France. The interracial love story in Sab was considered so scandalous that numerous copies were purchased and destroyed by Avellaneda's relatives in Spain. Despite their efforts to suppress the book, Avellaneda's brother, Manuel, remained loyal and brave, smuggling her banned books between Spain and Cuba. Sab became influential throughout Europe and the Americas, inspiring compassion for slaves and for young girls forced to marry strangers. Avellaneda not only believed that slaves should be freed and women should choose their own husbands, she was bold enough to portray interracial marriage and voluntary marriage as completely normal. She felt that regardless of ancestry, all Cubans belonged to a rich cultural blend of Spanish, African, and indigenous Saboni-Taino Indian origins. Her conviction that all should be equally proud of every ethnic component of a shared society was an idea so original and courageous that it helped readers question the way they viewed slavery, interracial marriage, and the broader issue of voluntary marriage. By telling a simple love story, Avellaneda conveyed her dream of universal dignity, freedom, and equal rights for men and women of all races. Avellaneda spent most of her adult life in Spain, where her writing often focused on marriages arranged for profit, a tradition she viewed as the marketing of teenage girls. With essays such as Capacidad de las Mujeres para el Gobierno, Capacity of Women for Government, she confirmed her role as one of the world's earliest and most outspoken feminist authors. While Avellaneda achieved remarkable literary success, her personal life was plagued by tragedy. After refusing two potentially profitable arranged marriages, she was shunned and ridiculed by disappointed relatives. Later, she fell in love with a man who refused to marry her because she was poor and another who abandoned her after she gave birth out of wedlock. She eventually married twice, but her first husband died of illness and the second was stabbed during a duel with a heckler who had tossed a cat onto the stage during a performance of one of her controversial plays. The greatest disappointment of Avellaneda's professional life was her exclusion from the all-male Royal Spanish Academy. Without membership, she could not receive the financial benefits granted to male writers. She satirized her rejection as the bearded academy's policy of discrimination against anyone who could not shave. In 1859, Avellaneda returned to Cuba, where she established a literary magazine for women. In 1864, on her way back to Spain, she visited Niagara Falls in memory of José María Heredia, whose poetry and abolitionist views had inspired her. During her lifetime, Avellaneda's ideas were considered shocking, but her clear vision of racial and gender equality was eventually accepted. Cuban slaves were emancipated, public employment and public schools were integrated, although private parochial schools remained segregated throughout the first half of the 20th century. Interracial marriage became common throughout the Spanish-speaking Caribbean, now home to one of the world's most culturally mixed populations. The archaic custom of forcing young girls into financially motivated arrangements was gradually replaced by voluntary marriages based on love. José María Heredia, 1803 to 1839. Heredia is regarded as Avellaneda's mentor, even though they never met. As Cuba's first romantic-era poet, Heredia paired his abolitionist views with the goal of independence from colonial Spain. He was still a teenager when he became a founder of Los Caballeros Racionales, the Rational Gentlemen, a non-violent branch of the secret society called Los Soles y Reyes de Bolivar, the Sons and Rays of Bolivar. Heredia was forced into exile after he was betrayed by a spy. He escaped from Cuba disguised as a sailor, lived in Boston, wrote poetry at Niagara Falls, taught Spanish in New York, and became a diplomat and judge in Mexico. Known as El Homero Cubano, the Cuban Homer, or El Cantor del Niagara, the singer of Niagara, Heredia inspired later generations of Cuban abolitionists and independence advocates. Often confused with his cousin, the Cuban-French poet José María de Heredia, 1842 to 1905. The following excerpt from the poem, Emilia, to Emilia, is representative of Heredia's work. Bajo el hermoso desnublado cielo no pude resolverme a ser esclavo, ni consento que todo en la natura fuese noble y feliz, menos el hombre. Under the beautiful clear sky I could not accept slavery, nor regard all of nature as noble and happy, except man. The writing of Gertrudis Gomez de C. Avellaneda prose excerpts from the abolitionist novel Sab, e quien se acordara de tu color al ver amar tanto y sufrir tanto. Who will remember your color when they see how greatly you love and suffer? Los hombres dirán que yo he sido infeliz por mi culpa, porque Sonado los bayos que no estaban en mi esfera, porque querido mira al sol, como el digila. Es culpa mia si Dios me ha dotado de un corazón y de un alma. Men will say it is my own fault that I have been unhappy, because I have dreamed of things beyond my reach, because I have longed to gaze on the sun, like an eagle. Is it my fault if God has given me a heart and a soul? Yo, las mujeres, pobres y ciegas victimas, como los esclavos, ellos arrastran pacientemente su cadena y bajan la cabeza bajo el yugo de las leyes humanas. Oh, women, poor blind victims, like slaves, they stoically drag their chains and lower their heads beneath the yoke of human laws. Poetry excerpt from Las Contradicciones, Contradictions. Ni libre soy, ni la prisión me encierra, vio sin voz hablar ansio. Busco el peligro cuando auxilio imploro, al centro moro me encuentro fuerte I. 1 a.m. neither free, nor locked in prison, I see without light, without a voice I long to speak. I seek danger while pleading for rescue, feeling doomed I discover my strength 9 excerpt from A mi jilguero, to my goldfinch, libertad y ama ti falta, J libertad y ama ti doy. J salta, pajarilo, salta, cuno tu tirana soy. Salida franca, ya tienes, mira. Goza, respira aor libra eres ya. You lack liberty and love, I give you liberty and love. Leap, little bird, leap, I am not your tyrant. A clear exit is yours, look, enjoy, breathe. You are already free, except from La noche de insomnio y el alba, the night of insomnia and the dawn, noche triste vista ya, cielo, suelo, mar. Brindandol. Al mundo profundo salaz, derraman los sueños belinos de paz. Night sad already you've seen air, sky, soil, sea. Offering to the world profound solace, spilling dreams the potion of peace. Excerpt from Romance, Ballad, Canto porque en los días sus condiciones precisas, corre el agua, vuela el avenue, silba el viento, y el sol brilla. Canto sin saber yo propio lo que el canto significa, y si el mundo, que lo escucha, asombro o y estima inspira. I sing because each being has its purpose, water flows, birds fly, wind whistles, and sun shines. I sing without knowing what my song means, and whether the listening world is amazed or wounded.